the data cleaning, analysis with DAX, and building visuals, building dashboards, isn't it? And then now we are going into SQL. So why are we going into SQL? And what are the dynamics of SQL? So, like I said, in Excel, you can use Excel to store data. When we were working in Excel, we basically used data that was stored in Excel files to work. So all you have to do is just double click the app to open. The app opens and then you make use of the app to do whatever it is you want to do on the data, isn't it? But when we moved on to Power BI, we saw that we could import Excel files, we could import CSV files, we could import data from web, we could import data from PDF, we could import multiple data at once, merge them, and so on and so forth. Okay, now some businesses make use of Excel worksheets or workbooks to store their data. Some businesses make use of Excel to store their data. There are some of you here that in your workplaces, it's Excel that you make use of to store data, isn't it? But Excel has a limitation, and it is that the number of rows on Excel, or the number of rows available for you to store on Excel, is just about 1 million rows, 1,048,000 and something. Okay? And there's a limit to the number of columns as well. I can't remember the number of columns. All right. So if your data is going outside of that range, for example, a company that generates so much data, generating 2 million and plus records, you cannot make use of Excel to store that data. Okay. So the data team in that company would have to implement a database for the company or the organization to store their data. A company like Facebook, Instagram, Google, their data is not being stored in an Excel file. Okay, so there are databases. So databases allow you to store more files. Now, think of database like this. You know your, let's think of a milk tin. Okay, a can of milk. Now, the content of the can, which is milk, you really cannot do anything with it until you have done what? You have gotten it out of the can, isn't it? So that can is simply used in storing it, right? So it's until you pour it out of the can, you pour it into, let's say, tea, before you can make use of it, isn't it? Or you pour it into probably a baking cake, or you want to make something. You know, you have to pour the milk out. So you use the can to store the milk, and when you're ready to make use of the milk, you pour it out of the can. You can also say, okay, so look at the scenario of salt. You go to the market, you buy salt in nylon. When you get home, you pour the salt out of the nylon into the salt container. So it's just like you're transferring data from one place into that container. So you can have, you probably bought like 5 salts, and you're pouring everything into one container, right? So when you pour it into that container, you store it. Whenever you want to use salt, you bring out the container, isn't it? You open it up, and then you take the salt that you want to make use of, right? Now, the database is very similar in the sense that the container is where you store your data. All right. So you really cannot do anything in that container. If you want to make use of the data, it has to come out of the container first. So the database is that container. All right. The database is that container. So Excel can work as a container, but aside saving the data, you can open that container and work on the data inside the container, isn't it? Power BI will simply connect to the container and create a copy of its own. But now you are working with the container. You cannot do anything inside the container when we are talking about database now. Okay, so if I now have data, stored in a container, thank you very much, Mr. Moses. So you can see the maximum number of rows and columns that Excel can store. So now, if I now have data stored in a database, okay, or in that container, which is the database, and I want to analyze the data, or don't let us use the word analyze now, okay? Let us use, I want to get a particular information. I want to get a particular set of data from the database. Remember, I cannot open the database like it's an Excel file, okay? You cannot see the content of the database. Okay, now if you want to get data out of the database to work with, it is where you need to communicate with the database. So it is not something that you will click here, click there, click here, click there for it to come up. No, you now have to write a piece of statement. Okay, from a combination of keywords and statements, okay, together, that when you run it, the database will understand what you are trying to say and give you the piece of required information. All right. So this is the concept of SQL. SQL now is that language. What language does the database understand? Is it Yoruba? Is it French? Is it Hausa? Is it Swahili? No. The language that the database understands is SQL, known as Structured Query Language. That is the language that you would have to speak, or in this case, write, in order to communicate with the database. So if you want to get data out of the database, you now use SQL. So let's dive right into our slides. So in this SQL class, we have 3 sections. Okay, we have 3 sections. I'm going to be looking at section 1 today. Then section 2 will start from the next class. For section 1, I hope if we're able to finish it up, we might finish on time. Whatever time it is that we finish, there's no problem. The assignments for SQL, okay, I think I'll communicate that later. But we might finish on time. But if we finish on time, I think we can proceed to a little bit of section 2. All right, so section 2 will run for next class, and section 3, the class after, 2 classes after, and then we'll have some practice classes to make up the entire 6 classes for SQL. So, section 1, I'm going to be looking at introduction to databases. What is a database? Types of databases, introduction to PostgreSQL, pgadmin, setting up a PostgreSQL database, PostgreSQL data type, differences between PostgreSQL and other SQL dialects. Then for section 2, we'll move on to retrieving data with select, the where clause and comparison operators, the between operator, the in operator, the like operator, and wildcard characters, sorting query results with order by, limiting query results with limit, aggregation functions. Then for section 3, we'll be looking at grouping and filtering data with SQL, where we'll see grouping data with group by, as keyword for column aliases, filtering groups with having, combining data from multiple tables with join, where we'll be looking at inner join and full outer joins. Alright, so there is no SQL training unless you are going into advanced SQL training. All of them would stop at
Hello, hope all is well.
I think the network kicked him out, so let's just give him a few minutes. Alright, so sorry for the break in transmission. My Wi-Fi went off. I didn't know it was not plugged. Alright, so so that's what we're going to be looking at for sections 1 2, and 3. All right. So let's dive right into section 1, introducing us to database. So, like I explained, a database is an organized collection of data that can be easily accessed, managed, and updated. I don't want to have to be muting you. Please make sure you're mute from time to time. So it is an organized collection of data that can be easily accessed, managed, and updated. Databases are essential for storing and retrieving large amounts of data efficiently and effectively. Okay, so virtually there's no place wherever you see data being collected, okay, just know that there's a database behind. Don't think too much. Don't think your data is just disappearing into the air. Whenever you are working online, okay, and you, let's say you want to open a website, or you're asked to log in or sign up or create an account, something like that, okay, once they ask you for an information, okay, wherever it is you have to input an information, just know that there's a database behind. Because where do you think they are storing that your information? So if you say first name, last name, age, date of birth, gender, and things like that, there is something behind that is collecting and storing that data. Okay, so that is why I find it funny when I hear people say, Nigerian government, they cannot do anything. I even doubt they have a database in this country. Every time they are saying, do NIN, do BVN, do this one. Why can't they use the one we have? I don't think there's a database in this country, and I laugh. Because so far, you are putting your details somewhere, and the system is capturing it. It is being stored somewhere, and that somewhere is a database. So there is no way Nigeria would not have a database management system. The only issue might be that it is not being managed properly, or it is not being utilized to its full potential or capacity. But there is a database at work. Okay, so it is an organized collection of data that can be easily accessed, managed, and updated. You can easily access it. Okay, easily accessed using SQL, structured query language. Access your data, make use of it, and be easily managed. That's going into advanced databases for people that probably want to become. Okay, most of you here are looking into data analysis, but some of you might now develop interest from SQL. Now you might develop interest in it. You can begin to look into what's it called, data engineering. Okay, here they make use of more SQLs. They make use of SQL more than a data analyst would. Because for a data analyst, if the data they give you is already in an Excel sheet, you are good. Your data engineer in your team or in your company can always download the data for you as an Excel file from the database and give it to you. So it's the one that will use SQL to communicate with the database. So if that's the case, you might not really use SQL like that at all as an analyst. Okay, so as a data engineer, you need to know some very advanced and complex SQL statements, queries. Okay, so the use varies. As a data analyst, you are most likely just querying the database, retrieving data most times, and that's what we're going to be looking at here. Okay, so we won't be looking into inserting data into database. That is the job of a data engineer. Collecting data from different sources, injecting it into the data warehouse and things like that. I won't be using all the terminologies because they really don't apply to you as an analyst.
Don't bring light, I don't get to now. So make I can't check.
Okay, so it can be easily accessed, managed, and updated. Easily updated, meaning you can, it is scalable. You can keep adding data
was almost
to it.
finishing.
That meter is on 00.
Okay, you can add data to it. Not that where you are is where you stop.
I know, but I was having this morning. I thought
You can add, you can remove.
Maybe throughout today before I refit
from it.
Yesterday, the meter was on one
Okay,
unit.
so databases are essential for storing and retrieving large amounts of data efficiently and
That's what I want to
effectively.
be
Not
sure.
tamper with your connection.
Now, while
Because even
that
the meter
is
on
a
00, you are not
database,
supposed to have
we have different types of databases. Not everything is the same. They don't share the same, what's it called, features. All right. Now, there are several types of databases, including relational, hierarchical, network, object-oriented, and NoSQL databases. Okay, but of all these type of databases, the most common and widely used is the relational databases. Okay, so relational databases like PostgreSQL are the most common type of database and organize data into tables with columns and rows. Take note of all these things, though. Okay, take note of these things. Your SQL tests coming up in 2 weeks' time. Take note of them. Okay, so as you are doing your Power BI project and you are submitting in 2 weeks' time, Monday, 11th of April, as you are finishing the Wednesday or the Sunday of that week, if I have your SQL test, immediately after your SQL test, I think you should be receiving your what's it called? SQL project as well. So the SQL project will be something that is very short, so that once you are done with it, you'll be able to receive your final capstone project. And mind you, let me chip this in as well. Remember, I said at the beginning of this program, and I've been saying that you would need to make what's it called? A video testimonial. Okay, so testifying to how the classes are being run, how the program is being run here at Digital. Okay. The reason for this is, scammers are plenty outside now. Okay. So the more people making video regarding a company, the better. All right. They see that a different set of people, not just the same people again and again. All right. And you are testifying to the fact that, okay, here at Digital, they teach these courses. Yes, I have been a beneficiary. I have learned this course at Digital, and it was taught in so way. All right, so just wanted to chip that in. So remember, you're making a video testimonial. By the next 2 weeks, I'll be giving you more information about how to do the video. Okay, or by next week. So now back to relational databases. So I said relational databases like PostgreSQL are the most common type of database and organize data into tables with columns and rows. So 2 facts to note there. Number 1, there's a way you read slides. Okay, now remove this like PostgreSQL first. Okay, just read this. Relational databases are the most common type of database. That is 1. They are the most common type of database. That is 1. 2 is this. Remove this whole line up until where you have and. Okay, and read like this. Relational databases organize data into tables with columns and rows. 2 facts. So number 1, they are the most common type of databases. Number 2, they organize data into tables with columns and rows. All right. So whenever you see a database that has column signifying fields, attributes, and then rows signifying records, you know it's a relational database. So relational databases and their importance. Now, relational databases are important because they allow data to be organized into related tables. Now, you are seeing tables, isn't it? They allow data to be organized into related tables. Related tables. Where have you heard something like that before? Relationship, related. Where have you heard something like that before? In the course of this training. Beautiful. Power BI model. Very good. Very beautiful. Okay, it means you are following. Good. So, related tables. You can have more than one table in such a way that these tables will be connected. They will be related. Okay, so while in Power BI, you were using model with maybe just 2 or 3 tables, let's say one normal table and then your calendar table. Here you'll be seeing more than one table. You'll be seeing more than 2. You'll be seeing more than 3. In fact, the data we're using to practice in our SQL for this training has 15 tables. Okay, and you will see how to make use of SQL queries to get data from these tables. All right, so relational database allows you, okay, or allows data to be organized into related tables and provide a standardized way to retrieve and update information. That standardized way is a language you use in communicating with the database. Okay, not that there are different formats to it or not, no. The language is one language, SQL. Though there are different dialects or flavor, which we'll see very soon. Okay, now relational databases are also highly scalable, efficient, and maintain data integrity. So it is highly scalable. You can keep on adding data to it. It's accommodating. Okay, I think, is it Facebook or SQL or United States Navy or NASA that make use of Postgre? Okay, various companies make use of PostgreSQL. So you can imagine the amount of data they are generating. I was speaking with a friend of mine, I think last week or some weeks ago, and he was telling me how he was working with data of about 500 million rows. 500 million rows. Do you think that kind of data is in Excel, you will store it? I mean, come on. Okay, so you cannot use Excel for that kind of thing. All right, that is where efficiency comes in. That is the case. That is where they are efficient. Okay, that is what now makes them efficient. And they maintain data integrity in the sense that not just anybody can tamper with your data. Unlike Excel now, that as you feel like you open, you double click and change whatever you have in the cell. No, doesn't happen just like that here. Okay, so let's move on. Now, we've talked about what a database is. You have a rough idea. We talked about types of databases: relational, hierarchical, network, object-oriented, and so on. Then we talked about relational database and its importance. Then we now said relational databases like PostgreSQL, meaning PostgreSQL is a relational database. So let us now see, okay, what is now PostgreSQL going on? Okay, now PostgreSQL is a powerful open source object relational. Okay, see the relational there. Relational database management system that is known for its reliability, scalability, and extensibility. Reliable, scalable, and you can use it and use it and use it and use it and use it. So it is widely used in enterprise applications, government agencies, and research institutions. A quick search online, businesses or popular agencies that make use of PostgreSQL, or popular businesses or popular websites or popular anything that make use of PostgreSQL. You see top names there. Okay, let's see. Let's do a search of our own. Let's do a quick search and see. PostgreSQL is one of the most popular, blah, blah, blah. So yes, another reason why we picked it, it is free. It is free. But this was as far back as 2019. I think PostgreSQL is leading the chart now. So you can see, okay, who uses PostgreSQL and for what? Do you see the top names we have there? Apple make use of PostgreSQL, Skype, Instagram, NASA, Spotify, IMDb, Reddit. Some of you might not know IMDb. You might not know Reddit. Some of you might not know. Okay. So do you see that in 2010, Apple replaced MySQL with Postgres? Okay. So I just used it just to tell you how important PostgreSQL is. Okay. So you might be wondering, oh, why are we not using Microsoft SQL Server, or why are we not using MySQL? Okay, it's because chances are when you get a job, okay, it is much more likely to have a company that requires you to know PostgreSQL language, the dialect. Okay, although whatever we teach you here, okay, in SQL is very similar to the general term or general language. So if you see a job opening and what they require is another kind of SQL, the idea is very different. Okay, if you just search for that SQL on YouTube and watch few tutorials, because of your idea or knowledge of PostgreSQL, in 1 day or 2 days, you should be able to understand fully or to some extent that particular dialect. Okay, so now what is PG admin? Because for those of you that installed PostgreSQL, you will see that after installing PostgreSQL, okay, the next thing you went ahead to do was to open PG admin. Remember, it was PostgreSQL installed. but you're opening pgadmin. Why are you installing PostgreSQL and then going ahead to open pgadmin? Now, pgadmin is an open source administration and management tool for PostgreSQL databases. Do you know the meaning of open source? There are some terminologies that we should have gotten familiar or we should know as analysts at this point in time. Okay, so who knows the meaning of open source? Available to the public. No, you're not hitting the nail on the head. Free. You're not hitting the nail on the head. Free source. You're not hitting the nail on the head. Can someone do a search? Beautiful. Can be worked on by anyone. It could be modified by anyone. Good. Good. Okay. But don't worry, we're not going to be modifying anything here. Because even I myself, I don't know how to modify it there. Alright. We should not stress ourselves on that. Okay. So all right. So don't begin to think that it's one big thing we're getting into here. Okay. So now the idea is that is the reason why some people take preference, okay, of PostgreSQL and pgadmin over other SQL dialects due to some changes that they can do. Those are engineers, okay, that make use of it from time to time. Okay, but that is not my own aspect, so I have nothing to say on that. Now, it is an open source administration and management tool. It allows you to manage your PostgreSQL databases. Okay, it is there you will access your database. You will write the SQL to communicate, to get your data, to manage the database. So it provides a graphical user interface that makes it easier for users to manage and manipulate their PostgreSQL databases as opposed to using command line tools. Can someone remind me of where you saw command line tools? Some of you have seen that command line tools today. Let me see. Who can remember where popped up? Exactly. During installation, someone said DAX. Are we taking note of things like this? Very good. During the installation. Okay. And you'll see that I told you that you need that command line tool. Isn't it? So you can decide to, in the installation, you also have pgadmin there. You can decide to uncheck your pgadmin and just install every other thing. But you will not have that pgadmin to work with your PostgreSQL. Okay, so if you now want to write query, you want to communicate with databases, let me show you how it will look. This is what you will do. You will go to a folder, PostgreSQL. You will now open SQL shell. This is how it will look. Everything will be black and white, like this. You see this thing? See this thing? This is how it will look. You now be writing some complex code, some keywords, some key terms that you will use in accessing it. Okay, but because of the way the world is going now, nobody wants to stress again. I mean, why stress me? Although some people still prefer using command line tools interface like this. So although some people still prefer using the tools, that command line tools. Okay, when you see Agba, but we are still babies. Okay, all of us together, we are together on this. All right. So now, why PG admin? So PG admin would provide you that user-friendly interface, not something that is just black and white like this. So it makes it easier to learn. Okay, it makes it more appealing to learn. When you open up the interface and it's looking as beautiful as Power BI interface was looking that time, you'd be ready to learn. When you're typing your code, it's showing different colors and all of that. You'll find it more appealing to learn. Unlike if you open your this thing, the one that is black and white, okay, something like this, and they say you should start typing SQL code, and you're writing select from, everything is just black and white, black and white, black and white. You just get that at one point in time. You just get that at home. What are we doing? Some of you will even say the Excel and Power BI you've learned is enough. Okay, so that is the reason why PG admin is there. So when you open up PG admin, the user interface is friendly. There are some things that, okay, if you want to open up the schema or you want to open up something, you have to type the code to do it on the command line. You don't have to do it in PG admin. Just click here, click there to open some things. You only have to write code when you want to communicate with the database. All right. So remember, it is a graphical user interface that makes it easier for users to manage and manipulate their PostgreSQL databases as opposed to using command line tools. Some people are writing coding in suites, like coding. I want to bet you've not encountered real coding. Because if you have encountered real coding, I bet you will not be learning, what's it called? Excel, Power BI, SQL. Because you would have been advanced. Okay? So it means the coding you have been coding is play. All right? So let's move on. So setting up a PostgreSQL database and client. So I said this already, but you don't have to click on the on this first link. Okay, click here for a video on how to do that. The video here is an old video. The video I sent you is the latest video. So the video here is an old video on how to download, install the PostgreSQL and all of that. I did it myself as well. Okay, but you don't have to do that. All right, since you already know how to download and install. But if you don't, you can click here to see how to do that. Then PostgreSQL data types. Okay, so PostgreSQL supports a wide range of data types, including numeric, text, date/time, Boolean, and arrays. All right. In addition to these built-in data types, PostgreSQL also allows for custom data types and user-defined operators. So click here for the official data types documentation. So let's go ahead and click there. Let's see what we have. Allow. So if you open up their data types page, okay, you see various types of data type, many of which you, an analyst, will not even have access to even say you want to work with. Okay, the common ones you'll be seeing are numeric, monetary, character, date time, Boolean type, and that's all. You see all these geometric types, network address types, bit string types, UUID type. You would hardly see it. Okay, it is for engineers that understand the meaning and the use of those data types. Okay, so let me just open one data type and just explain what it means. All right. Now, unlike Excel, where most of these things I'm not even supposed to even go into it because we're hardly going to touch it. We're not even going to touch it. It is for those that are creating database. No. This is not what they call big data. Okay, but it is related in the sense that big data would have to be stored on the database. Okay, so big data is data that is very large. Simply. Okay, all the data we've been working with in Excel, those are minute. I will even say those are cockroach data, insect data. Okay, big data spanning into about 50 million records and so on. Okay, so it's not as if there's one particular definition for it. Big data is simply data that is big. Okay, if you go ahead and search what is big data, do you see this? See this here. Big data primarily refers to data sets that are too large or complex to be dealt with traditional data processing applications. So what are your traditional data processing applications? Your Excel, your Power BI, and things like that. Okay, or maybe your Excel, your SPSS, things like that. All right, so it's not as if there is one complex definition. Okay, it's as the name is, big data, data that is big, simply. Okay, so let's go back to our data types. So now, let me now explain the concept of data types. You know, in Excel, the format of a column, when I say the data type of a column, where you go up, you click, you will change it from general to date time, or you change it from general to numeric, something like that. Okay? What you are simply saying is that the column, the data in that column is a date data, or it is a number data, or it is a text data. That's what you are saying. Okay? So in Excel, you can double click your Excel file, open it up, and Excel will just give it random data, whatever it has on the column. Excel will just try to read what is on the column and say, okay, I think this data is a numeric data, or I think this data is a date data, or is a time data. Okay, if it's in Power BI, so when you import the data into Power BI, you know, when you open it, what do you notice in the Power Query? Power Query would have taken some steps for you. Source, navigation, promoted headers, change type. Now that step, change type, is simply changing the data type of the columns. So Power BI is using its initiative. Okay, this column should be this data type. This column should be this data type. I know the data is ready in the column, isn't it? But here in SQL, for engineers, you see I'm saying engineers, when they're creating the database, okay, they will have a scenario where they need to define the data type of that column. It's a compulsory thing. If you don't define the data type of the column, you can't work with it. Okay, so they need to define the data type of the column. So when they are creating it, this is the process. This is how they create it. They will give the name of the column. They say, okay, I want to create a column. I want to call the column name. Now, the data type for this column should be text. And the number of characters in that text should not be more than 50. So, if they connect that database to a website and they say, input your name, if you put a name that has more than 50 characters, it will not take it because it has already exceeded the number of characters for the data type text in the database. So specifying those data types on each column before they create the database allows them to validate data that is coming into the database. So if they create a column, they will say, okay, this column we're calling it age. They might now put a limit. Okay, so the age should be between this number and this number. It should not contain text. So if you are signing up for something, they ask you for age, and you want to write 15, you now write it in words. You will see that at times it will reject it because it would not be accepted by the database. Okay, so defining those data type for each column is what the engineer will do. Okay, and it is these data types he use. So if it is a numeric column he wants to create, he can use any of this data type. So small int is a data type, integer is a data type, big int is a data type. In Excel, that you can type as many numbers as you want in a cell. If you create a column as an engineer, you create a database, and in that database you create a table. In that table you create a column. Let's say you call that column sales. And when you are creating the column sales, you now use the data type small int. Small int. Okay, what it means is that the number in that column should not pass this range, 32,768 or minus 32,768 to plus 32,767. So meaning your sales must not be more than this range. So if your sales is entering $40,000, it will not save in that column because we define it as small int and it cannot pass this range. $40,000 is already more than 32,000, so it will not store it. So if you want to work with column that will store maybe sales, large amount, you might want to look at integer or big int. Integer will store how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. About 2 billion. 2,147,483,647. Okay, and many more like that. So serial, small serial, big serial, okay, auto-incrementing integer. So as you are inserting a new data into the database, say for instance, you can create an identification column and say, okay, this identification column, the database should be serial, meaning it will auto-increase by itself. So if I insert a new record, it will automatically assign an identification for that record. So it will keep on increasing, 1, 2, 3. So if I call that column and I give it the data type small serial, when it reaches 32,767, I won't be able to insert any other thing into the database. I have to first change the data type using SQL statement or query or code to another data type so that it can accommodate more number or higher numbers rather. Okay, so that is numeric data type. So there is also character data type, which is your text. Okay, when you want to work with words, text, strings. Okay, character data type. And the N here simply means, okay, the number of characters that it will take. Okay, you can also look at monetary types, money, currency. So you can even see, do you see, automatically currency makes use of this range. Something that is similar to big int in the numeric data types. Do you see? Okay, so because you know that it is a currency, it can span as much as possible. So they gave it as a wide range. You see that? So there are other data types, to date time types. You have timestamp, you have date, and so on and so forth. Okay, so back here. So those are the PostgreSQL data types. When you query a database and it brings out the data, you would see the data types on each column so that you understand each data type. All right. So differences now between PostgreSQL and other SQL dialects. All right. So let me explain this. Okay, we're almost done. Good. So let me explain this. Now, when we say SQL dialect, we said SQL is what? Structured query language. isn't it? And we said it is what you use in communicating with your database. All right. Okay, I'm Yoruba, so let me use Yoruba example because I'm not familiar with other languages. Now, in Yoruba, those of you that are Yoruba would know that even other languages too, you have an idea of what I'm saying. Now, you know that there are different accents of Yoruba. They'll say there's Yoruba Ibadan, there's Yoruba Ijebu, there's Yoruba of Kwara, there's Igbo, and so on. Isn't it? So there are different accents. Okay, so I might be Yoruba Ibadan, and if you speak Yoruba Kwara to me or Ilorin, I might not understand. Isn't it? But it is also Yoruba. Okay, so also we have Egba, Ekiti, Jesha. Thank you very much, sir. So also we have SQL. Okay, so we use it to communicate with databases, isn't it? But there are also different SQL languages, SQL dialects, accents. So we have PostgreSQL. Okay, then we also have MySQL. All right, we have CSQL. Now, don't mix it up. While PostgreSQL is a relational database, the language you use to speak to that database is also called PostgreSQL. MySQL is also a relational database. The language you use to speak to it to get data from that database is also called MySQL. So the name of the database is the same thing with the name of the dialect. Okay, but it can be different in the case of Microsoft SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, okay, MS SQL. Now, that one, the name of the relational database is MS SQL. The SQL language used is not called MS SQL, it's called TSQL. TSQL. Let me show you here. SQL dialects. So do you see this? Do you see this? Okay. Transact SQL, which is also known as TSQL, is the dialect of SQL. You can see how they are calling it dialects. Okay, it is the dialect of SQL that is used in Microsoft SQL Server database. So while the relational database name is Microsoft SQL Server or SQL Server, the dialect used is TSQL. But if I search for, okay, what is the dialect used for my SQL? The only thing you would see is MySQL. You can see there is no MySQL dialect. So it is simply also called MySQL. You can just say SQL or it's also MySQL. Okay, so you will not really see, okay, one specific SQL for MySQL or one specific dialect for MySQL. So the language is also called MySQL. The database or relational database is also called MySQL. Same thing for Postgres. It is MS SQL, I think Oracle as well. Oracle database. Oracle is also a database management system. Okay, let's see, SQL dialects for Oracle. PL, procedural language / SQL, found in Oracle. Okay, so they have different dialects. Okay, now as an analyst, you need to be